Did you know that only 31% of U.S. workers were engaged last year, meaning engaged in their work? 62% of employees admit they're quiet quitting. I used to say to some friends of mine, unless you have a cape in the phone booth, there are no two yous. The amount of minutes you will spend working from the age of 18 to the age of 65, designated retirement age, when you consider the workday, getting ready for the workday, the commute to work, the commute back, the debrief time. It's about 7 million minutes. This is James Rosseau, aka Trig, and let me welcome you to the Corling Solutions Show. Family, did you know that only 31% of U.S. workers were engaged last year, meaning engaged in their work? But did you also know that that number can go up 2 to 3 times more when people are fully engaged in work that they enjoy and they love? And that is the focal point of today's episode. Welcome to the Corling Solutions Show. Of course, my name is James Rosseau, and my goal is to empower you to reach your potential through faith, arts, vocation, and education. So let's get to it. Hopefully, this is not your first time since we started this series about 2 episodes ago, focused on success on your own terms and taking the journey to get the success that you want, the success that you deserve. But you can only do that by being intentional. And so my idea was, let's take a series into play where we go through a number of things, and we also allow you to do a number of things interactively. And you can get that interaction by going to holycoaching.net/journey or thecorlingsolution.com/journey. And you will get into an interactive guide that walks along with all the things that I'm talking about. And of course, if you want my book as well, you can go to Amazon and search for Success on Your Own Terms, and you can get your brother's book and use that as well, which has more context. But I think you honestly will get everything you need right here in the midst of this conversation. So let's jump into it. A lot of times when people think about passion and purpose, they think it's one of those far distant things, that it is ethereal, but it is so not that. I can't tell you how many times I've had the opportunity to speak to small groups or large groups and ask questions such as, can you remember what it was like when you were 12, 13, 14 years old and you knew exactly what you wanted to do? You just take a pause right there. And people will look around and you'll see their faces begin to light up. And they'll say, yeah, absolutely. And you'll even see some people turn to the left and right and chat with each other. Yeah, I used to want to, do this, fill in the blank. I used to want to be a doll maker. I used to want to be an architect. I used to want to be so on and so forth. So I let people talk for a while, purposely. I'll just be quiet, let them talk for a while. And then I'll say, it's so good to see all of you remember that. How many of you are doing that thing today in any form? Not many hands go up. You usually see the facial expressions of, why am I not doing that? That's the facial expression I usually see. And so, of course, a conversation ensues, which I love because it allows people to tap into one or two things. Either they've never found that thing, they've never spent the time to find it, or they had it and then let it go. And in any case, there is work that can be done once you realize that you're missing a golden opportunity. People who tap into their passion and purpose don't do things such as quiet quitting. Have you ever heard of quiet quitting? Quiet quitting is when you show up for a job every day, you walk through the door, the turnstile, you go to the desk, get your coffee, sit down, and start to work, but not so much over time. You begin to pull back on that work. You begin to let your thoughts wander to other places. You begin to maybe spend more time on social media from your desk. You begin to maybe play more Monopoly Go on your phone or spades, whatever your game du jour is, but you're not doing the work. And what started as an 8-hour true work day over time slowly dwindles to 7.5 hours, 7 hours, 6.5 hours, 6 hours, etc. to you are showing up physically, but mentally you're not in the game. That's quiet quitting. 62% of employees admit they're quiet quitting. Think about that, 62%, because they're disconnected from the work. And it's really that simple. It does not need an elaborate explanation. They are disconnected from the work. Family, could that be you? Could you be someone who is showing up, punching in, physically or virtually, but you're really not connected to the work? You really don't have a feeling per se about the work. You will do the job on paper, But mentally, emotionally, etc., you are not connected to the work. That could be you, family. How do you fix it? Tap into your passion and purpose, obviously, right? You know I was going to say that. And so I want to go through a few points that might help you do that. And let me start here. Passion and purpose work is not a luxury, family. It's what you were designed to do. Think about that. Think about the design of a hammer. Would you use a hammer to try to screw in a screw? You absolutely would not. You know what a hammer is built for. It is built to knock things into walls, etc. To use the shape, the design, the heavy weight at the top, the handle to help it stay firmly in your hand and perform a specific job. What were you designed to do? You were given gifts and talents and things that come more natural to you in order to get a certain job done. And that's a big part of what we're talking about here, getting a certain job done so you could live out what Colossians 3:23 says. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. Imagine that. Imagine being in a place where you don't separate your work life from your spiritual life. How many of us have done that? Where you see your work life over here and you see your spiritual life over there. Imagine merging together everything God created you to be, all the gifts, the talents, etc., and letting that show up in all spaces of your life. Just imagine that for a minute. What would that look like if you didn't have to cut yourself into little pieces? I used to say to some friends of mine, unless you have a cape in the phone booth, there are no two yous. There is not the Clark Kent and then the Superman. There is one you. The more you try to separate the one you, the more anguish you kind of have in your life, the more mental gymnastics you have to do. But when you allow your whole you to show up, there is magic that happens because you're in the flow of what God is calling you to do. So let's take a step back and look at, well, what if you don't know your passion and purpose? What if you haven't had a chance to fully explore it? Because let's just say you buy into the notion that, man, I am going to live 7 million minutes in my life. And if you didn't hear that, you can go back to the first episode to talk about this. But I'll give you the quick primer. My book originally, again, was not going to be called Success in Your Own Terms. It was going to be called 7 million minutes because that's the amount of minutes you will spend working from the age of 18 to the age of 65, designated retirement age, when you consider the workday, getting ready for the workday, the commute to work, the commute back, the debrief time. It's about 7 million minutes. I mean, just think about that, 7 million minutes. But what if you didn't have to live those 7 million minutes again, wandering, figuring out things, and not being disengaged? What if you could do it in such a way that you loved what you do? And so let's jump into some questions that might help you figure that out. And by the way, you can go to holycoaching.net/journey or thecoilingsolution.com/journey, and you will find an online, I don't even want to call it workbook. Let's call it an online guide that helps walk along with this conversation. And so last week we went through baselining and understanding where you are today. And again, that's so important. What gets measured gets managed. And so I want you to have a baseline to start with. But then what do you do after the baseline? The first thing is to understand directionally, where are we going? What is the vision you are pursuing? And that starts with your passion and purpose. So when you go to this part of the guide, it starts with some questions to help you unpack it. The first question, when you were 12, what is it that you knew that you wanted to do with your life? List at least 2 things. Write them down. You shall remember. And why the age of 12? Because that's right around the time just before you start to get inferences from people that at some point you're going to have to earn some income. And so when you're at that age around 10 to 12, you're in the play stage. You're doing what feels natural to do. You're running around with your friends, hopefully outside, enjoying the air, but taking in life in a objective way, not a confined way. And so asking you to remember that, I just truly want you to dial back and remember. If you need to close your eyes, sit in the corner, whatever you need to do, dial back to what was it like at that time? What did you experience? What did you spend your time putting your fingers into? And write it down. And then the next question takes you a little deeper. What did you know in your heart that you would do? So there's a thing of, there are the things you were doing, but then a lot of times at that age, you have a sense of, this is what I know I will be doing with my life. I have no doubt about it. I will be doing this kind of work. I will be an architect. And you start doing little architectural type things. You treat your crayons differently. You treat your drawing sticks differently. You ask your parents for larger paper so you can draw and sketch, and you're watching TV shows and taking notes and such. What was that for you? I use architect because that's one of the things I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be an architect. The Lord showed me something different later. When you were 12, also, what did people say you were a natural at? You know how people do that at the family barbecue, reunions? You're so good at so on and so forth. Man, you're a great swimmer. You're so good at throwing the horseshoes. You seem to have a natural extension to your arm and the way you do it. What were the things that people said you were good at naturally, that you just showed up to and seemed to just walk right into it? What were some of the things that you thought were easy for you that you watch other people struggle with? You would stand at practice at a certain thing. Maybe it was basketball, and you watch people try free throws, and they'd be all over the place. And for some reason, your free throws just dropped, shot after shot. Or you were in art class, to stay with the architectural thing, and people struggled with creating perspective on a canvas, and you just seemed to be able to draw it, and the street had depth to it, and birds in the air, and everything just seemed to just put themselves on paper as you just simply moved your hands. It was so easy for you, but you watch your art teacher counsel people over and over through the struggle of getting it to look like that. What got you into the zone? Where did you find yourself losing sense of time and space doing a certain activity? What was that took you into that zone? Who was someone maybe you admired during that time, that there was something you loved about them? They did something that you really liked, that you took note of, and you even said carefully, man, I want to be like blank as I grow up. Man, I want to do what they're doing. Who was that? What were they doing? Conversely, and this is going to sound strange, and so I'm saying that up front, it's going to sound strange. Who was someone you disliked? Who was someone you said, man, when you saw them, there was something about what they did, how they showed up, etc., that you disliked? And why was that? And do you have an impetus, a feeling, a tugging to help them change, to help them grow? Because that could reveal something too. I'm asking all these questions because as you answer these questions at the end, you will look for and likely see a theme or themes start to show up. Now, fast forward to today. This is one of my favorite questions I like to ask interview candidates after the interview, and I pretty much know they're going to get the job, because I would hate for them to ever think that they're not going to get the gig, right, because of the answer to this question. But here's the thing. If you today won an untold fortune, let's say $20 million, after you take all the wonderful trips you had planned to take, cruises, going to foreign countries, man, after you purchase the things you want to purchase for your parents, if you still are blessed to have them, hang out with nieces, nephews, cousins, buy the technology you want and all that, and you still have this incredible fortune left, what are you going to do with your time? Where are you spending your time, family? What are you doing with it? What does each day look like? Because I can tell you this, the running around with money will only last you for so while in terms of satisfaction. You'll get the things that you've always thought you wanted, all the shoes you need, colorways of the various Jordans, all the things. You'll do it. And then what? You will still have a natural need to spend your time doing something. But now you're not necessarily beholden to income coming from this thing. So what will you be spending your time doing if you have this untold fortune? Let me ask you another question, and this is not my favorite question, but it does help you think about it. You just found out you had 2 days to live. First day is amazing. You spend it with loved ones. You do all the things you think you should do with loved ones. etc. Well, in that second day, you get to do whatever you want. What would you spend it doing? How would you allocate that time? Family, those are some questions to get you going in answering this passion and purpose question as a leading question for the journey. I would encourage you to take the time and go through these. You don't have to rush through them. I wanted to talk through them to give you some context, because this is the baseline setup where you are, and to take stock of where you are. This starts to define and put words to where you want to go. And so please take the time to do it. Don't rush through it. I'm excited that you're taking this journey for yourself. I'm excited to be walking alongside you. Again, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, go to holycoaching.net/journey or thecallingsolution.com/journey and use the guide and get started, family. Until next time, be informed, be empowered, be accountable. Much love.